Story 1. I've lived my whole life in southern Missouri, right near the border with Arkansas. Our town, Lanton, isn't even on most maps. There's nothing here but trees, rusted-out trucks, and people who stopped asking questions a long time ago. I work nights at the lumber mill, so on my days off, I explore abandoned places, old motels, burned-down barns, train cars left in the woods. I go alone because no one I know has the stomach for it. That changed last fall. There's this farmhouse about 7 miles east of town. Locals call it the Bell Place. Everyone avoids it, says it's cursed, but that word gets thrown around too easily here. The story goes, the family disappeared in the 50s, left food on the table, laundry on the line. Never found a trace of them. Cops didn't care enough to look too hard. After that, no one moved in. The place just rotted. I wasn't expecting anything scary when I went there. I'd been inside a dozen places just like it. Graffiti, dead raccoons, maybe a meth rig if I was unlucky. That's what I thought I'd find. But the Bell Place was different from the second I stepped onto the property. The air felt heavy, not hot, just wrong, like the inside of an unplugged freezer. There weren't any animal sounds, no birds, not even wind in the trees. The front door was already halfway off its hinges, so I slipped inside without making much noise. The main floor was what you'd expect. Dust, mold, peeled wallpaper, broken furniture. But then I found the door to the basement. It had a padlock hanging from it, rusted and useless. The door itself looked newer than everything else in the house, like someone had replaced it in the last 10 years. It had no knob, just a metal latch. That should have been enough to make me leave. But I'm an idiot. I pried it open with my crowbar. The air coming from the basement was ice cold and it smelled awful. Not death exactly, more like iron and mildew. I pulled out my flashlight and went down. The steps were solid, no creaks. That stood out. They should have been falling apart like everything else. When I hit the bottom, I almost dropped the flashlight. The basement wasn't just a room. It had concrete walls, not stone or dirt. The floor was tiled, and in the far corner was a wooden cage, maybe 5 feet tall, with iron bars embedded into the frame. Old black iron, looked handmade, and inside it was what I thought, at first, was a skeleton. Cow, maybe. Huge. Too big for a deer. But the longer I looked at it, the less it made sense. It didn't have hooves. Its limbs ended in something like human hands, but with too many fingers, and the rib cage was wrong. Too long, almost like a snake's. The skull had horns, sure, but the jaw was flat like a person's. I just stood there trying to figure out what I was looking at. Then I heard the latch click shut behind me. I spun around. The basement door was closed. I hadn't touched it. I bolted up the steps and tried to push it open, but it wouldn't budge. The latch wasn't just shut, it was locked again. I could hear the padlock swinging against the wood on the other side. My flashlight started to flicker. I was breathing too fast. I backed down the stairs, thinking maybe there was a window or something I'd missed. That's when I noticed the skeleton in the cage had moved. Not a lot, just a slight shift in its position. One arm had dropped lower. I thought maybe I was imagining it. I aimed the flashlight directly at it, trying not to blink. Nothing. It was still. I turned to scan the rest of the room, just for a second, and when I looked back, it was standing up. I swear to God it had stood up inside the cage. It wasn't a skeleton anymore. The bones were still there, yeah, but they weren't dry. They were slick, like they'd just been pulled from something wet. There was skin now, just patches, like wet leather draped over parts of the frame. It had eyes. Too many. 8, maybe 9, in a rough circle where a face should be, and they all blinked, slow and out of sync. The thing gripped the bars and leaned toward me. The wood creaked and the iron groaned. That cage was meant to keep something in, but it wasn't enough. The thing opened its mouth, and there was no sound. Just breathe. Heavy, fast breath, like it had just woken up and was hungry. I backed up until I hit the wall. My flashlight died completely. I screamed, just one loud, stupid yell, and then something thudded hard against the bars. Not once, twice. Then a crack, like the wood was splintering. I didn't wait. I pulled out my knife and jammed it between the door frame and the latch upstairs. I don't know how long it took, but I eventually forced it open. The second it gave, I flew out of the house, didn't even shut the door behind me. I sprinted all the way back to the road and hitchhiked into town with blood on my hands from where I scraped them on the doorframe. I didn't sleep that night. Story 2. I was a junior at a small liberal arts college in upstate New York. Won't say the name for obvious reasons, and I used to hang out with a group that was big into urban exploration. We weren't professionals or anything, just a few bored kids with flashlights and a fascination for the places we weren't supposed to go. Abandoned houses, old tunnels under campus, whatever. Anyway, this happened my third semester. My friend Caleb found a door in the back of the language lab in Danforth Hall that didn't match the rest of the floor plan. It was painted over and half blocked by a bookshelf that had clearly been there forever. But once we moved the shelf and scraped around the edge, we realized it was a hinged door. No knob, just a keyhole and a faint outline. I'm the one who figured out it wasn't locked, just jammed. We pried it open with a crowbar from the theater department and found a narrow stairwell leading down. It smelled like mildew and copper. I remember that. The air changed as soon as we opened it. There were 4 of us that night, me, Caleb, Jenny, and this guy Theo. We were all laughing, joking about ghosts and cults. You know, the usual. The steps were stone and slick with condensation. Caleb went first, lighting the way with his phone. I had my cheap LED flashlight. We hit the bottom after maybe 30 steps. Then it opened into this long corridor. No lights, no signs, just old brick walls and maybe an inch of water on the floor in some places. It was dead quiet. About halfway down, we found a carved archway that led into this massive room. It stopped us cold. The space must have been 60 feet long, 20 wide, with a vaulted ceiling and pillars along both sides. The pillars were stone, and each one had a sculpted skull mounted at the top, right where it met the ceiling. Realistic. Too realistic. On top of each skull was a rusted iron spike, like for a candle. The kind of detail you don't see in a campus building. The room was dry, but it reeked of mold and something older, like dried blood and oil. At the far end of the room was what looked like an altar, stone, rectangular, raised up on a platform with steps. Behind it, a kind of narrow doorway with a curtain rod, but the curtain had long rotted away. We didn't speak for a few seconds, just stood there, looking at it all. I remember Caleb whispering, "What the hell is this place?" Jenny said, "This wasn't on any blueprint, right?" No one answered. We just moved forward. We checked out the altar. It had deep gouges on top, long scratches like something had been dragged across it repeatedly. Behind the curtain rod was a narrow room, maybe 6 feet wide. There was a wooden chair in there, like the kind you'd see in a courtroom, facing the wall. Next to it, a yellowed paper nailed to a beam. I took it down. There were 3 questions typed on it in some serif font like you'd see on an old typewriter, the kind that bleeds a little on the page. Who enters the gate? What debt have you brought? Will you stay willingly? We thought it was part of a theater performance or some student project. That's what we told ourselves. But then Theo found the locked room. It was to the right of the altar with a steel door, bolted from the outside. Not rusted either, like it had been oiled recently. We almost didn't notice it because it was painted the same dull gray as the wall. Caleb pulled the bolt back. Jenny said, "Don't open it." But he did. Inside was nothing but a sofa. One of those old floral pattern things from the 70s, with stuffing coming out of the armrest. No windows, no lights. Just the couch, facing the wall, and something was on it. At first I thought it was a mannequin. It sat upright, hands on its lap, head slightly tilted. The skin looked waxy. It wore a black suit, like funeral clothes. Then it moved. Not a lot, just a twitch of the fingers. I remember hearing the sound of its nails brushing the fabric of the sofa. Theo screamed, loud, like he'd been burned. We backed up fast. Caleb slammed the door and threw the bolt. Jenny was crying. She kept saying, "What was that? What the fuck's was that?" I asked Theo what he saw. He wouldn't answer. just stared at the door, lips moving silently. I was about to shake him when we heard the bolt rattle. Not loudly, just a soft metallic click, like something inside was testing the lock. We ran, didn't even talk about it until we were outside, gasping in the cold air. None of us wanted to go back. Theo refused to return to campus, said he'd transfer, and he did. He left 2 weeks later, never answered my messages again. Story 3. I never really talked about this until now, mostly because people either laugh or give you that polite nod that says they think you're full of it. But I swear to you, what happened in that school was real. I'm from a small town outside Toledo, Ohio, and growing up there wasn't much to do except drive around or sneak into abandoned places with your friends. We called it urbex before we even knew there was a name for it. This happened the summer after I turned 20. My buddy Kyle and I had been itching to get into the old Lakemont High building. It had been shut down since the mid-90s after some asbestos scare and a fire in the chemistry lab. Every window was boarded up, the front doors were chained, and the place just looked angry, like it didn't want you there. Naturally, that made it the ultimate challenge. We figured out a way in by climbing this rusted drain pipe on the side and slipping through a busted window on the roof. Dumb, I know, but we were careful. We brought flashlights, backup batteries, a small crowbar, and even some masks in case there was still asbestos floating around. Not exactly pros, but not totally stupid either. Inside, it was what you'd expect. Dust thick in the air, locker doors hanging open like crooked teeth, smashed desks, graffiti everywhere. We started on the top floor and worked our way down. Most of it was just dead quiet, aside from our own footsteps echoing off the walls. But the basement was something else. We almost didn't go down there. The stairs were half flooded with water up past the second step. You could see your flashlight beams disappear into black water like it just swallowed the light. Kyle tossed a piece of broken tile down there, and we waited. No splash, just a faint, hollow sound, like it hit something soft. "I'm good on that," Kyle muttered. "Yeah," I said. "Basement's a no." We turned back and made our way into the gym, which still had a few basketballs rotting in the corners and a giant school logo peeling off the far wall. We were just about to head back up to the roof exit when we heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the other side of the gym, just behind the double doors. We both froze. It wasn't like multiple people, just one set of feet, pacing, and it would stop, then move again. Not toward us, but kind of back and forth, like someone thinking or waiting. We killed our lights. The gym went completely dark except for faint gray strips of light bleeding in from cracks in the boarded windows. We just stood there dead silent. "Maybe another explorer," I whispered. Kyle shook his head. "Who the hell comes to a place like this alone?" He had a point. We waited for maybe 2 minutes, holding our breath, and then the footsteps stopped. Just like that. We took the chance and crept across the gym, keeping low. Kyle eased the gym doors open and peered into the hallway. Nothing. No footsteps, no sound, just pitch darkness ahead and a little dusty light behind us. "Clear," he whispered. We kept moving, down the long hall toward the staircase that led back up to the 4th floor. That was our only way out, unless we wanted to punch through boarded doors and trip every motion sensor in town. We made it maybe halfway when we heard it. Running, heavy pounding footfalls. Not behind us, like right behind us. Maybe 30, 40 feet. Sprinting, full tilt. I turned and flashed my light behind us. Nothing, just hallway. But the sound kept coming. Fast. "Go!" Kyle shouted, and we tore up the stairs 2 at a time. The sound chased us the whole way up. But when we hit the 4th floor landing and yanked open the roof door, nothing. The footsteps stopped like someone had cut the sound with a knife. No echo, no breath, just silence. We didn't look back. We scrambled out the window and onto the roof, practically throwing ourselves onto that drain pipe. I didn't care if the whole thing came off the building. I just needed down and out. Once we hit the ground, we sprinted across the lot and didn't stop until we were 3 blocks away, gasping and bent over on someone's lawn. I looked at Kyle. "You heard it, right?" He just nodded, eyes wide and pale. Neither of us saw anything that night. No shadows, no figures. But those footsteps were real. And the way they stopped, that dead, unnatural silence, still gives me chills just thinking about it. It wasn't just someone playing a prank. There was no laughter, no doors opening or closing, nothing human about it. We never went back. Story 4. I live in Elgin, Illinois, not far from the old mental hospital ruins that everyone around here either dares each other to visit or avoids completely. Me and my best friend Nolan were the first kind. We were 16 and thought we were invincible. We'd explored the old laundry building, the nurse dorms, and even the underground tunnel that linked the medical wing to the morgue. But there was one part of the complex nobody messed with: the tower. It juts up behind the main asylum like a watchtower, windows bricked over, completely sealed. People said it used to be for high-risk patients, solitary types. No doors, no lights, no reason anyone should be up there. That night was just supposed to be a quick trip, in and out, just to prove we could. Nolan brought his camera. I brought a flashlight. We hopped the south fence and headed across the cracked pavement toward the main building. I remember the air felt heavy, like the quiet was wrong somehow. Not peaceful, just wrong. We weren't even 5 minutes in when Nolan elbowed me. "Dude," he whispered, pointing up. "Look at the tower." A faint glow, yellow, sickly, shimmered from the top window, the one that had always been blacked out. I thought maybe it was a reflection, but the light flickered like it was from a candle or a lamp. "There's someone up there," I said, more confused than scared. At first, then we heard it. It started low. A rough, guttural sound like a dog with a sore throat. A bark, but not a dog. It barked again, louder this time. Aggressive, fast, like it was responding to something. But it wasn't coming from the ground. It was coming from the top floor. From the tower. "Is that?" Nolan started, but he didn't finish. A shape moved in the window. Just a silhouette, human height, but the proportions were off. The arms looked longer. The head was tilted too far to one side, like its neck couldn't support it properly. And it kept barking. Not yelling, not shouting. Full rhythmic barking, over and over. We didn't move. We just stood there and stared like idiots. Then it slammed its hands, both hands, against the inside of the glass. And that's when I saw it. It wasn't barking. It was laughing. That barking sound, that was someone imitating a dog. Just a man, or something like one, up there, alone, barking through a wide smile that didn't look even remotely sane. It looked like it went too far up, almost to the eyes. "Run," I said, but Nolan was already moving. We tore back across the lot, hurdling weeds and rubble, nearly tripping in the grass by the south gate. Behind us, the barking had stopped, but then it started again, closer. I risked one glance back. The tower light was gone, the window dark again. "Nolan, where is it?" I hissed as we caught our breath behind the wall outside the fence. "I don't know, man. Did it move? Did we see that? What the hell was that?" "I think," I started, but then I heard a tap. Not a sound from the building. A tap on the chain-link fence. Just once. Tap. And then, breathing. Right on the other side. We both turned, slowly, flashlights off. There was no one there, but the metal links were still trembling, like someone had just been leaning on them. We didn't wait. We ran, full sprint, all the way to Nolan's car. Didn't talk the whole drive home. I felt sick. My heart didn't slow down until the next morning. We never went back, not once. Story 5. I don't talk about this night much, not because I'm scared of being believed, but because I don't want to remember it. I live in western Kentucky, not far from Owensboro, bourbon country. It's not unusual around here to find old distilleries tucked away in the woods, half-eaten by time and vines. Most are empty shells. Some still hold something else. Me and two friends, Landon and Reese, used to explore abandoned places, just for fun mostly. We weren't into filming or posting it anywhere. Just bored kids in our 20s who liked to poke around forgotten buildings. This one was supposed to be routine. The place was called Riverbend. Shut down in the 70s after a fire gutted part of the property. Most people didn't even know it was still standing. We found it through an old map someone posted in a local Facebook group. Said there was a safe on the property, a big one, still locked. We got there just after sundown in early October. Cold air, but not freezing yet. Still, the ground was weirdly slick. Like patches of frost had settled in the shaded spots, even though it hadn't snowed. We joked about ghosts making the place cold. The distillery was massive. 5 or 6 buildings in total, some of them half collapsed. The main structure still had a metal sign bolted above the entrance. Riverbend Distilling Company, in rusted letters. We climbed in through a broken side window. Inside, it smelled like wet wood and old grain. No graffiti, no trash. Surprisingly untouched. We split up a little, not far from each other, and explored. Landon was obsessed with finding the safe. I was just checking the architecture, the walls and staircases, how things rotted. Then we found it. The safe. It was huge, like the size of a walk-in closet, and welded into the concrete floor of what had probably been an office. The door was still locked, round dial intact, no signs of tampering. We took a few pictures, tried the dial for fun. Nothing. After that, we kept going, working our way through a warehouse section. There were these odd details. Entire doorways sealed shut with brick, as if someone had tried to wall off whole rooms after the place closed down. Not with cement, just stacked, mortared bricks inside old frames. Looked recent, maybe within the last 10 years. We joked about bootleggers or satanic cults. Standard stuff. Then we got to the boiler house. This part I remember clearly. Reese spotted the building from the catwalk between warehouses. Said it looked different, newer. We had to climb down through a collapsed staircase and squeeze through a side door. It smelled wrong in there. Not like mold or rot, more like burned plastic and rusted metal, and cold. Much colder than outside. I had my flashlight, Reese had a headlamp, Landon used his phone. As soon as we stepped inside, the light from outside seemed to die. Not gradually, just gone. The boiler room was gutted. All the machinery had been stripped except for some massive pipes along the walls. But the floor, this was the thing. The entire wooden floor had been torn out, not collapsed, ripped up, neatly, intentionally, exposing just dirt and broken support beams, except in the middle. Dead center of the room was a square patch of untouched wood, maybe 6 by 6 feet, and on that square, perfectly centered, was a single metal chair, like a dining chair, no padding. Rusted, facing the door. Above it, hanging from the ceiling by a wire, was an old bulb, a bare, dusty bulb. And it was on. I remember just standing there for a full minute, not saying anything. None of us did. We just stared at it. Reese whispered, "That's not hooked up to anything." And he was right. The ceiling was stripped, wires cut. No power lines, no generator hum. Just that one bulb glowing faint yellow above the chair. Landon stepped forward, muttering something like, "What the hell is this?" And I grabbed his arm. "Don't!" I said it before I even thought. It just felt wrong. The kind of wrong that hits you in the spine, like your body knows something your brain doesn't yet. Reese walked the edge of the dirt floor, circling the center. "This is set up," he said. "Someone did this recently. This isn't just old." He was whispering now, and I think we all were, like we were inside a church or something. I knelt by the dirt to shine my light into it and noticed something else. The dirt wasn't solid. It had been dug up, disturbed, and filled back in. Fresh, like someone had buried something. A lot of something. There were drag marks around the wood platform, but none led to or from it. Just around it. Then the bulb flickered. We all flinched. Reese said, "Okay, no, this isn't funny," like someone was playing a prank, even though none of us had done anything. And then the chair moved. I didn't see it happen. I swear to God I blinked. But it was in a different position, turned maybe 30 degrees, still facing generally toward the door, but not perfectly. Landon made this sound, half laugh, half whimper, and backed up into me. "You saw that, right?" he said. The bulb flickered again, brighter this time, buzzed, then the chair scraped, loud, sharp, like metal on metal, even though it was sitting on wood. It jerked an inch to the left, right in front of us. Nobody touched it. We were at least 10 feet back. Reese was the first to break. "I'm done! I'm done!" He turned around and booked it out of the building. Landon followed without a word. I lingered for half a second more. I don't know why. I just kept looking at that bulb and that chair. The sense that something was in that chair, even though it was empty, was overwhelming. I felt it watching me, or waiting for me. I couldn't breathe right, couldn't move. Then the bulb popped. A loud crack, glass shattering. The room went completely dark. I turned and ran blind, slamming into a pipe before Reese grabbed me by the jacket and yanked me toward the exit. We didn't talk much on the way back to the car. No one said anything the whole drive home. We just sat in silence, each of us staring straight ahead like we left part of ourselves back in that room. The weirdest thing? When I looked up the distillery later, I found almost nothing. No mentions of Riverbend after the fire. No records of it being sold, no demolition orders. It's like the place was erased. The only photos I can find now are ours, and they're all corrupted. Every single one we took that night is either blank or distorted. We never went back. None of us ever talked about it again. Story 6, I'm from a suburb outside of Lyon, France. Grew up in a regular working-class family. Nothing crazy. I'm 28 now, but this happened when I was 19, back when I thought sneaking into abandoned places was the coolest thing in the world. It wasn't about tagging or anything. It was more this weird mix of adrenaline and curiosity. Some people go skydiving. I used to go into forgotten buildings with a cheap flashlight and bad judgment. There's this town about 30 minutes from where I lived called Saint-Maurice-sur-Dargois. Not much there, some old Roman ruins, a few farms, woods that stretch for miles. My friend Adrian told me about this sanatorium tucked in the hills, said it was shut down in the 60s. The place had been used to treat tuberculosis patients. Most of it was torn down or swallowed by vines, but one wing apparently still stood. So we went. Adrian, Remy, and me. It was a late afternoon in October, still light out, but the sun was dropping fast. We parked off a trail and hiked maybe 20 minutes through brush and bramble. I remember Adrian kept checking the GPS on his phone, even though the service was crap. Finally, we saw it. This low, skeletal-looking building swallowed by ivy. Windows shattered, roof half caved in. No trespassing signs were bolted to the rusted gate, but the chain was already cut. Looked like others had been here before us. Inside, it smelled like mold and wet stone. The floors were warped and covered in old leaves. Everything echoed weird. We kept our voices low, not on purpose, just it didn't feel right to talk loud in there. The main hall still had some of the old wall paint, light green, cracked and peeling. There were names scratched into it. Some in French, some in what looked like German. We didn't even need flashlights at first. The last of the sun was spilling in through broken windows. We made our way down this long corridor, stepping over rubble, kicking cans. I remember seeing a wheelchair tipped over on its side, wheels locked with dirt. Remy tried to open a side door, but it was jammed. That's when Adrian said he wanted to check out the basement. I didn't even know there was a basement. He pointed to this old stairwell at the end of the hall. The banister was rotted through, steps covered in soot or something black. I told him we should just look upstairs instead, maybe take pictures and leave. But Adrian had that dumb grin on his face, the one he gets when he's about to do something stupid. "Come on, 5 minutes," he said. I don't know why I followed. I wish I hadn't. We went down first. Adrian led, Remy behind him, and I brought up the rear. It got pitch dark by the fourth step. I switched on my flashlight, the beam jittery in my hand. Everything was damp and tight. The stairs felt like they were sinking. At the bottom was a wide room. Used to be a boiler room maybe. Pipes lined the ceiling, some of them leaking. There were shelves, old medicine cabinets, a couple rusty beds turned on their sides. Then out of nowhere, I heard a soft tapping. It wasn't loud, just this slow, wet tapping, like something dripping, but wrong. Adrian froze. "Did you hear that?" We all did. The sound was coming from the far corner of the room. There was a large metal door half off its hinges. Looked like someone had tried to pry it open years ago. The tapping was coming from inside. Adrian walked toward it. I hissed at him not to, told him to stop messing around, but he didn't even answer me. He just stared at the door, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. He reached it and looked in. I saw his shoulders jerk back like something startled him. "What is it?" I called. He didn't answer. I walked up next to him, and I looked. The room beyond wasn't very big, just an old storage room or maybe a containment cell. I don't know. But in the middle of it was a single hospital bed, bolted to the floor. And on the bed, there was something lying there. At first I thought it was a person, thin, curled up, turned away from us. But then I realized it wasn't breathing. The skin, what was left, was grayish and stretched tight. Hair still on the scalp, long and dark and matted. It didn't look staged. There was too much detail, too much rot. I started backing away. Adrian stepped forward. "Don't go in there, man," Remy said behind me. Adrian looked back at us and said, "Do you see her breathing?" His face looked pale, like all the color had been drained from it. He sounded almost fascinated. "Adrian, stop it!" He ignored me. Took one step in. The tapping started again, louder now, rhythmic, not from the body, but from the pipes above us. It echoed wrong, like it wasn't sound but pressure hitting inside your skull. I turned to tell Remy we needed to get out of there, but he was already halfway up the stairs. Then Adrian screamed, not just startled, screamed like someone was twisting his insides. I turned back. He was inside the room now, grabbing at his face, his arms, screaming that something was touching him, something cold. He was thrashing, slamming into the bed, kicking at the air. His flashlight dropped and rolled toward the figure on the bed, and for a split second, I swear to God, I saw the thing move. Not like a twitch. It turned its head toward me. I ran. I didn't stop to pull Adrian. I didn't think. I ran so fast I tripped up the stairs, smashed my shoulder into the hallway wall, and just kept going. Remy was outside already, calling my name, panicking. I didn't stop. We ran all the way back to the car and didn't look back. Adrian didn't come out. We called the police later, lied and said we were hiking, and heard someone screaming inside the building. They found nothing. Said the basement was sealed off, collapsed in the 80s. Said there was no way anyone could have gotten down there. They never found Adrian. I've gone back to Saint Maurice a few times since then, driven past the tree line where we entered, but I never stepped foot in that place again. Story 7, I live in Muscat, Oman, grew up here. I'm not what you'd call a thrill seeker, but I do enjoy poking around old abandoned places. Mud brick houses mostly, out in the interior. They're just haunting in the daytime and absolutely bone-deep eerie at dusk. My friends think it's weird. Maybe it is. But I like the silence of places that used to breathe. This happened in April last year. I'd been driving along a stretch near Bahla. Yeah, that Bahla. The one people say is full of jinn and black magic. I didn't think much of that. I was just out there looking for photo spots. Around 6 p.m., I pulled over at the edge of a wadi where the remains of a crumbling mud house stood against a red-gold sky. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. I parked, grabbed my flashlight and camera, and climbed through what used to be the front wall. The place smelled of dry dust and old rot. The roof had mostly caved in, but a couple of inner rooms were still intact. The floor was cracked and uneven, littered with tiny bones and bird droppings. As I stepped through one of the doorways into what looked like a back room, my foot caught on something low. I looked down and noticed a length of frayed rope stretched across the top of the doorway. Hanging from it, about 10 of them, were small, severed bird heads. Real ones. All of them strung together, beak to beak, like grotesque beads. They looked fresh. No flies yet. The eyes in some of them were still glassy. I remember just going still, not scared, not at first. More like my body didn't know how to react. I aimed my flashlight directly on it. Their necks were hacked, not cut clean, and there were traces of what looked like red powder, maybe saffron or something, smeared across the rope. That's when I realized it wasn't just random. This wasn't some kid's sick prank or dead birds from an owl or whatever. This looked ritualistic, deliberate, like some kind of offering, a charm. I've heard the stories. People in remote parts still believe in binding spells, jinn traps, blood magic. I never really bought into it, but I didn't feel right. Not just because of the birds. The air felt wrong, thicker, like I just stepped into a place I wasn't supposed to see. I backed out slowly, not turning my back on the rope. I was just about to duck back into the main room when I heard a soft crunch. Footsteps, not mine. It came from behind the inner wall. A steady, slow step, like someone shifting gravel with bare feet. I froze. My breath caught in my chest. I held the flashlight steady toward the wall, not blinking. Another step, then another. "Hello?" I said, low and quick. "Is someone there?" No answer. I stayed like that, still, flashlight aimed, until the silence pressed against my ears. My hand was sweating so bad the torch almost slipped. Then I saw a shadow slide across the floor. It moved like it was crawling, but upright. A low, fast glide, not a walk. I swear to God it moved in complete silence, except for this dry, clicking sound, like claws tapping stone. I didn't wait to see what it was. I ran. I shoved through the doorway, scraped my arm on the mud brick, and bolted into the twilight. I didn't look back. My camera bounced against my side, and I nearly tripped, scrambling down the slope to my car. I hit the door lock 3 times before it even opened. I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the wheel, engine off, chest heaving. The sun was almost gone now, and the whole sky was dim. I stared at the house, waiting to see if something would come to the door. Nothing did. But I heard the sound again. Not footsteps this time. Laughter. A quiet, dry chuckle right outside the driver's side window. I turned my head so fast my neck popped. Nothing there. Just desert wind. I started the car and floored it out of there, barely missing a boulder near the road's edge. Didn't stop until I hit a gas station half an hour away. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Kept thinking about the birds, that rope, the shadow, that laugh. I went through the photos on my camera the next morning. Most were normal, dusty walls, cracks, empty rooms. Then I got to the last one I took, right before I saw the rope. There's a figure in the far back of the room. I hadn't seen anyone when I took it. Swear on my life. The figure's tall but hunched. The face is long, stretched. No features I can make out. Just black holes where the eyes should be. And long arms. Way too long. I've never shown that photo to anyone. I deleted it that same morning. I don't go exploring anymore. Especially not near Bahla, not after dark. Story 8. I've never liked talking about this, and honestly, I'm not even sure if I should. But if anyone ever stumbles on that place, maybe this will serve as a warning. I live in Lucerne, Switzerland. Been here most of my life. Back when I was about 15, my older brothers and I used to wander off and explore whatever we could find. Old buildings, storm drains, abandoned ski shacks, you name it. We weren't troublemakers or anything. Just kids bored out of our minds during summer. One evening we were staying in a rental near Wengen for a hiking trip. It was right at the foot of a forested slope, no other houses nearby. Our parents were inside drinking wine, and the 3 of us, me, Ben, and Leo, were itching to get away from the adult talk. I don't even remember who spotted it first. A narrow path cut into the trees, mostly hidden by underbrush. The sun was just about to go down, but there was enough light to see a rusted gate a little ways in. Ben kicked it open. It screeched like something dying. Beyond it was a narrow tunnel carved into the rock. There was a sign, Eingang verboten, entry forbidden. Of course, that only made us more curious. We stepped inside. At first, it was just a short corridor, man-made concrete walls flaking apart. Old pipes lined the ceiling. It reeked of rust and mildew. I remember saying, probably just an old power station or something. Leo had his phone out for light, and Ben was laughing, tapping the walls like some kind of idiot ghost hunter. We kept going. Maybe 30 feet in, the walls changed. No more concrete, just raw, jagged stone. Like the tunnel kept going into the mountain. That's when the air turned cold. Not normal cold, dead cold, like refrigerator cold. And it got quiet. Not just quiet forest, quiet. It was like the sound got sucked out of the place. "Yo, this is weird," I said. "Want to go back?" Ben asked. I was about to say yeah when I felt something brush my hand. I froze. Cut it out. What? Leo said. We're in front of you. They were. Both of them. I looked down thinking maybe I hit a root or something. Then I reached out. I touched fur, wet fur, thick, matted, and cold. My stomach flipped. I yanked my hand back and stumbled. There's something in here. Ben turned around, lighting up the wall with his phone. What are you talking about? I grabbed my own flashlight from my backpack and clicked it on. The beam hit the ceiling, and I swear to God, I screamed. Above us were deer, dozens, hanging upside down, hooked into the rock. Their bellies were slit open, skin peeled back like someone had been studying them. Blood still dripped. It was fresh. Some of it was on my hands. Leo gagged and turned away. Ben just stared, slack-jawed. Who the hell? Who does this? I backed away, light shaking in my hand. Then I saw something that made me stop breathing. At the very end of the tunnel, past the rows of carcasses, was a person, just standing there, motionless, no flashlight. No face I could see, just dark clothing and a hood. But they were facing us. Leo whispered, "Who is that?" No one answered. "Maybe a hunter," Ben mumbled, but he didn't believe it. His voice cracked. The figure didn't move, not an inch. I raised the flashlight again, still not moving. Then, without warning, every single hanging deer started to swing, all at once. Not from wind, not from movement. They just started to sway, slowly, rhythmically, left, right, left. Chains rattling above us. Then the figure tilted its head, not side to side, up and back, like it was looking at the ceiling or listening. Then it took a step toward us. That's when we ran. We didn't say a word. We just ran like hell. I dropped my flashlight. Leo tripped. Ben hauled him up, and we sprinted back through that concrete corridor and out into the trees. We didn't stop until we hit the rental house, slammed the door shut, locked it, then stood there panting, shaking, covered in sweat and blood. Our parents asked what happened. We lied, said we saw a bear or something. I couldn't sleep that night. None of us could. We never talked about it again. Story 9, I grew up in Cohoes, New York, a fading little town where half the brick buildings look like they're trying to disappear into the ground. My brother Kyle and I have always been into weird places, abandoned houses, empty train cars, that kind of thing. There's not much to do around here unless you make your own fun, so we got into urban exploring without really calling it that. We just like going where we weren't supposed to. A couple years back, we found something that still doesn't sit right with me. I've only told a few people because the second it leaves my mouth, it sounds made up. But it wasn't. It was an abandoned paper mill on the edge of town. People just called it the Stack because of the giant smokestack you could see from the highway. I'd passed it 1,000 times without thinking twice. But one summer, Kyle said, "We should hit the Stack, just once." So we did. We went on a Saturday in late July, just before sundown. No clouds. Air still and heavy. We parked a few blocks away and walked in through the side lot, cutting through waist-high weeds. There was a big, busted loading dock that led into the mill, and we slipped in through a cracked steel door. The air inside hit different. Hotter than outside, but dead still, like everything had been sealed for decades. Inside, the place was massive. Imagine 3 Costcos stacked vertically, old concrete floors, rusted rail systems, broken glass everywhere. Pigeons roosted in the rafters. You could smell the rot, the mold, that dry stink of rusted metal and wet paper. It didn't feel haunted, just dead. We decided to explore floor by floor. Started from the top, the roof, where the old catwalks connected the ventilation ducts. You could see the whole river from up there. After taking some photos, we moved down to the 4th floor, then 3rd. Kyle was filming on his GoPro, just panning around, mostly for laughs. Nothing weird. Just your usual creepy vibes, old machinery, graffiti, stuff like "help me" and upside-down crosses. You see enough of that stuff, it stops meaning anything. We didn't really talk much, just moved, slow and quiet, listening for raccoons or squatters or anything else with a pulse. We made it down to the basement stairs about an hour later. That's when it happened. We were standing at the top of the basement stairwell. It was pitch black down there. No light at all. Kyle pulled out his flashlight and clicked it on, but the beam just hit dust in the air. We both stood there, trying to decide if we should go down. Then I heard it. A scream. No buildup. No echo. No warning. Just sudden, sharp, close. It came from down the stairs, from the basement. It was the kind of scream that tears through you, high-pitched, cracking, but it wasn't just someone yelling. It sounded like someone was being skinned alive. Kyle turned and looked at me. We didn't say anything. Not one word. He clicked his flashlight off. We both just stood there, frozen, for maybe 5 seconds. Then we backed away from the stairs, slow, not running, not yet. Just moving like if we made too much noise, whatever was down there would hear us. The scream didn't come again. We got back up to the 3rd floor before we started moving faster. By the time we hit the roof access ladder, we were running. Full sprint. Climbed up and stayed there for a while, catching our breath, trying to make sense of what we heard. Finally, Kyle broke the silence. "That wasn't an animal." "No," I said. He looked pale. I felt it too, like my skin wasn't sitting right on my bones. We waited another 10, maybe 15 minutes. No sounds, no movement, just the river and some far-off train horn. Eventually, we climbed back down, stayed away from the basement stairs, and exited the way we came. Never looked back. Here's the part I don't usually tell. A couple days later, Kyle checked his GoPro footage. He never mentioned it again, just said the audio got screwed up. When I pressed him, he just shook his head and said it glitched out. But I watched him delete the whole thing. I remember his hands shaking when he dragged the file to the trash bin. I haven't gone back. Neither has he. The place is still there. The stack. You can see it from the 787 on-ramp if you're heading south. Sometimes when I drive past it, I wonder if anyone else ever made it to that basement, or if something else came out. We didn't report it. What would we even say? That we heard something awful down a stairwell and ran like cowards? I don't know what it was. A person? Some kind of old speaker system? Something living down there? But here's what gets me. There was no echo. Not even a little. The place echoed like crazy when we walked. Boots clanging, beams creaking. But that scream was dead flat, like it came from right next to us, but without touching the space around it. Like it wasn't meant to be heard by anyone real. I still think about it sometimes, mostly at night when I can't sleep. I'll remember that sound and every hair on my body stands up all over again. We were just two idiots chasing cheap thrills. But what we heard, what we felt that night, that wasn't thrill, that was a warning, and we listened. We never went down those stairs. We never should have even gotten close. Story 10. I grew up just outside of Altoona, Pennsylvania, in a dead-end town where the biggest thrill you could get was either racing trains or breaking into old places with a flashlight and a weak sense of self-preservation. I was 16 when it happened. I hadn't thought about it in years, not really, until I drove past that part of town last week and saw the empty lot where the old college used to be. That did something to me. My stomach flipped like I'd swallowed ice. There were 4 of us that day. Me, Josh, Mikey, and Ren. It was summer, hot and still, and we were bored out of our minds. Someone had told us the old Hillard Community College campus had finally closed for good after it had sat half abandoned for a decade. Ren had a busted-out window in his dad's truck, so we drove over there late afternoon with backpacks, headlamps, and the dumb excitement of kids who think nothing bad can really happen. The front was boarded up, but we found a side entrance. Broken glass, kicked-in lock, easy. It smelled like rot and old paper, and we kept making jokes just to stop from feeling creeped out. The halls were wide, lined with classroom doors, everything peeling and stained. You know the look, moss crawling up the walls, paint bubbling, ceiling tiles collapsed like soggy cake. We made it through the admin building, then into what must have been the arts wing. Still had some old student projects on the walls. I remember one, papier-mâché busts of celebrities all cracking and warped. Ren held one up, saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, Nicolas Cage," in a dumb voice, and we cracked up. That was the last time we laughed. Mikey found a stairwell behind a locked fire door that someone had clearly broken open. The stairs led down, and we assumed it was a basement, maybe a boiler room or old storage. But it wasn't just that. We came out into what looked like a small wing, with maybe 5 or 6 doors on either side of a wide hallway. No windows. The walls were this pale green with mold creeping up in waves. I remember my flashlight flickering and Josh smacking it with his palm. Everything was dead silent. Ren said, "Weird this place is even down here. Doesn't match the rest." Mikey pointed to a plaque next to a door. The lettering was worn, but you could make out Behavioral Sciences, Observation Lab. "Old psych wing," Mikey said. "Probably where they studied rats," Josh joked. The rooms were mostly empty. Broken chairs, dry erase boards with faded notes. One had a two-way mirror. Creepy, sure, but not terrifying. Not yet. Then we reached the last door on the right. It was shut, and something about it, maybe how intact it was, maybe how clean the handle looked, just felt off. No tag, no number, just a plain beige door with a round knob. Mikey turned it. It opened like it had been waiting for us. I remember the air changed when we stepped in. Colder, still. The room was maybe 20 by 20, with thick, mustard-colored curtains covering the entire back wall. Like theater curtains, heavy and pleated. There were blood stains on the floor, up the wall, and streaked across the fabric. Long, dark smears. Dried, but not old. A few months, maybe. Enough to keep its color. None of us said anything for a second. Then Josh muttered, "Is that blood?" We didn't need to answer. We knew it was. There were splatters on the ceiling, big ones, patterns that didn't make sense. One corner of the room had what looked like a mattress with no frame, half shoved into the wall. And right above it, there was a hook embedded in the ceiling, like the kind you'd hang a punching bag from. "Yo, this ain't right," Ren whispered. Then Mikey said something I'll never forget. "The curtain's moving." We all turned. He was right. That thick curtain, heavy as it was, had this slight ripple, like someone had just passed behind it. Ren said, "There's no draft in here, man." Josh stepped back and said, Nope, I'm done." Then it happened. From behind the curtain, we heard something. A dragging sound, long, slow, like something heavy being pulled across linoleum. None of us moved. Then came the sound of something tapping. Tap, tap, tap. Not loud, but deliberate. Tap, tap. Mikey whispered, "Someone's back there." Ren started backing toward the door. "We gotta go." Josh pulled at the handle. It didn't budge. "What the hell?" he whispered, twisting it. "It's stuck." "No, it's locked," Mikey said. "It was never locked." Then the curtain snapped tight, like someone yanked it from the other side. No breeze, no air. Just a sudden whip, and it stopped moving entirely, flat and motionless. Then a voice, right from behind it. A woman's voice, raspy, barely above a whisper. "Don't leave me." We bolted. Ren slammed into the door and it gave way that time. We sprinted back through the hallway, nearly falling over each other. I didn't look back. I didn't care if anyone was behind us or not. My chest was caving in. All I could hear was blood pounding in my ears. We didn't stop until we were outside, gasping, all of us pale and shaking. None of us said anything on the drive back. Not until Josh finally spoke, about halfway home. "She said not to leave her." No one replied. We never told anyone. Not our parents, not other friends. We didn't even tell each other again. We just let it sit in the back of our minds, rotting quietly. I didn't go back there. None of us did. A few years later, the city tore the place down. It's just an empty gravel lot now.